What's going on, guys? And I have an important announcement. As you guys have seen on Facebook, the War Cry Podcast now has a merch store through Redbubble. What you'll do is you'll hit that link below, select the logo that you like. You know, we got a wolf logo, we got that Bigfoot scratch or the Dogman scratch logo. Once you select the logo, you'll go down, hit your styles. If you want a T-shirt, if you want a sweatshirt, or if you want different things, or a sticker or whatever. You'll select the color of that, and then your size, and then you hit that checkout button. And hitting that checkout button and getting that T-shirt supports the podcast. And I appreciate everyone that listens, and it's amazing, and I do truly appreciate it. But with that said, let's get to the episode. So run me my music. It's very, very dangerous.
Get these spidey sense, I was like, oh, something's off.
I'm just like, man, I'm waiting to hear something,
Get that crowd warmed up. Is Mr. Jehovah Tiger.
What's going on, guys, and welcome to another edition of the War Cry Podcast. I'm your host, Jehovah Tiger. This is the 64th episode of this podcast. And on this podcast, I'm going to be talking about a few different things. I mentioned in the previous episode that we were going to be doing an observation episode. Well, here it is. First thing I really want to talk about, and this is something that I think hits closer to home for me. I know I mentioned Cole Brings Plenty, who was found passed away last week during, I guess, the week after Easter, which is a terrible situation. And there's more details coming out about that are very kind of odd to me. I saw a post saying that someone, I guess it was in his clan or maybe a sister or someone close to that family, was found passed away as well. And details are, vague and few and far between on both of those. So, it's just very sad. But there's a young man who had been missing for quite some time, in northeast Oklahoma, on the Cherokee Nation res, and his name is Trey Glass, and he was found, here just a couple days ago, I believe, as I'm recording this. And it just goes back to, I don't understand. I just don't understand why on some things. Like, I see this, I feel like I'm seeing this every week now. Like, just more and more and more and more. And it's just like ongoing. Like, it just never stops. Maybe it's because social media makes everything easier to see. I'm really just not understanding. I look back on, my younger years. He was Trey Glass was a senior in high school. I look around my junior, senior, early college years. I feel like I'm lucky in a sense on some things, because I don't want to say that he put himself in a bad situation, because I don't really know. I think a lot of us really don't know, but it's just rough, man. It's just rough seeing that, and you got another young native guy who, who knows what could have happened to him, what he could have become. And I go back to what I said on the previous episode, and it brings forth my mortality. All the dumb stuff that I've done, and just idiotic things situations I put myself in. And, who knows how my life would have shook out, and to think about this young man or these young people who are just going missing, and then they're found dead. It's just, it's brutal. It's brutal to think about. Hopefully, the Cherokee Marshals look into this, and maybe we find something and get some, so the family gets some closure. Not really for me, but for the family. But it's just, I really don't know. A lot of times I'm always have an opinion about things, but with this, missing and murdered, people, I just don't understand. I don't really understand. I don't know if it's a subconscious thing for whoever, what's kind of sad too, and not trying to place blame on us as a people, but I see a lot of these cases that involves, people within, the tribe or the nation, and it's just very sad. But I wanted to touch base on that. I'm actively, thinking about that family, and hopefully, they get some closure on that. I guess you could say on a lighter kind of topic. But y'all see what P Diddy's been out here doing? I have I I creep the internet on especially Twitter. Twitter's hilarious. Some of the stuff that's going on. I guess P Diddy's house got raided. There's some information coming out that maybe he's the one that paid the money to have Tupac taken out. Some information from Keefe D in Las Vegas. Feds, Homeland Security. I think they had more people go after him than they did Osama bin Laden, and I think that's kind of wild. They had his family in handcuffs and all types of crazy stuff. But people been calling him the diddler for a while, and now people are saying, instead of people used to say no homo or pause, now they're saying no Diddy, which is crazy. No Diddy, that's crazy. No Diddy though, but it's just it's a wild time. If we look at 2024, we look in January, we had some crazy stuff. And I believe in February we had Cat Williams coming out talking crazy to people. In March we got the Diddler coming out and all that stuff. And then in April, he has been the expense of a lot of jokes. And that's Mr. Orenthal James Simpson. OJ passed away, I believe, what is it, the 11th, April 11th, or last week, basically. I have never cracked so many jokes on a celebrity as much as I have OJ Simpson. But one thing that I want to say and give some background to why I think this is so funny. Or not funny, his death's not funny. Its death is never funny. But him being alive, when he was alive, O.J. Simpson leaned into a lot of these jokes. Like, for instance, he would tweet something, or he would congratulate somebody and say, "Hey, you did an excellent job, winning that football game," and someone would say, "Wow, that is a killer take." Another one is when they show highlights of OJ, they say, "Wow, he's really slicing and dicing through the defense." I shouldn't be laughing at that, but and he would lean into it. So he, over the last football season, was on a show with Cameron and Mace. Mace is former Diddy artist, and he's been outspoken about Diddy. Diddy ain't paying people, not giving them their publishing. And Cameron, famous rapper, he had the song "Hey Ma." They have a sports show on YouTube, and if you haven't watched it, it's pretty hilarious because they be saying to pause. Now they say no Diddy. But OJ has been on that show for the past year, and basically there was times where OJ would allude or lean into some of these jokes. Like, one of them was he basically was like, "I just want to tell you guys that," he was real serious when he said this, but he obviously was joking, but he was like, "I got something for you. I got a confession to make." And then kind of stood there quietly And Cameron and May started dying laughing. I mean, because it's, alluding to, him, the 90s interview he had, early 2000s, where he said, I have a confession to make. And it was basically, you know, him saying that he can now, or he doesn't feel safe walking around LA or being in LA because his wife's murderer is still out there. It's like, come on, OJ. I had put something on TikTok, kind of going through. If you haven't followed me on TikTok, Warcry Pod, but he's like alluding, to that book that he wrote. If I Did It, I think is what it was called, but it was like published like right after like the trial and or it might have been before the trial. I don't know. He's a wild dude, but OJ has leaned into these jokes. Like there has been times where on Twitter where he has responded to people like, I know that these things are, there, and he would like make a slash or a killer joke, or he said, yeah, I've been making a lot of killer jokes lately. It's like, come on, OJ. But he has passed away. Something that I was watching different reaction videos, and I'll tell you, this is kind of nasty. This is really nasty. But Caitlyn Jenner came out and said, good riddance. And I'm sitting over here like, Caitlyn Jenner, didn't you kill somebody with like on a vehicle, like a vehicular manslaughter, and his dog or something? And you didn't get really any jail time? Like, and you want to say good riddance to OJ, who got found not guilty? I find those things odd to me. Like, the wrong place, wrong time, Caitlyn Jenner, to be saying crazy things about someone who had just passed. And I'm going to be honest with y'all. I'm probably going to catch some flack for this. But part of me thinks he didn't do it. I'll be 100%. 100%. There is a large part of me that is like, well, maybe he didn't do it. Kind of looking through, the tweets and people kind of talking about OJ on Twitter. Somebody came out and said, a theory has always been in LA that it was his older son who did it. So at the time that Nicole and Mr. Goldman, where I guess before this happened, the incident happened, the murder happened, they were at the restaurant where OJ's son was working. And OJ's son was very upset that maybe she was stepping out on OJ publicly, but they had been split up. And that's another kind of theory. And I there's things about that trial that maybe, and ESPN did a pretty good job in my opinion. OJ, basically just detailing OJ's entire life. And OJ has a connection to Biggie Smalls, who was killed, basically assassinated in 97. This goes all the way back to 91, though, when Rodney King was beat down and, went through that trial. And a lot of this information, if you guys want to deep dive into the LAPD, I would suggest you go listen to the dossier with, what's his name? Mike Sikorsky, I think is his name. But the podcast is named The Dossier. And go back all the way to the first episode. And this podcast details the corruption of the LAPD and some of the things that happened between early 91 all the way till basically early to mid 2000s. But Rodney King's trial, they went through that, and 17 officers, or 10 plus officers, were basically almost acquitted, basically. Saying Mr. King had been violent in the past and had a felony charge and all this stuff. And during that time with the LAPD from 91, from that trial on. Oh, another crazy thing about I believe it was the OJ trial, got moved from LA to another county, or it might have been the Rodney King. But then you got the riots, the LA riots that happened. And during that time, there was such a tension within the LAPD between white and black officers. An example of that is in the early '90s, there was an incident between Kevin Gaines and Frank Liga. You know, it was an officer, two officers basically got into it on the roadway, and Officer Frank Liga shot Officer Kevin Gaines, and killed him. And that ramped it up too even more. So you get to the OJ, situation, and LAPD always kind of, they did not want to arrest or widen the racial gap in that city at that time. So they allowed OJ to get away with a lot of stuff. It could have been anywhere from alleged. This is all alleged because there's no, this is all just stories people tell. But OJ, had a lot of friends on the police department that he would have come over, and they always said that that was OJ's allure, that he would, keep himself out of trouble. But he had a anger problem. Now, we don't know. That's all hearsay. There was never really, in the courts they really couldn't, they could use the witness testimony of that, but during that time you have such a racial divide that I think it was Chief Bernard Parks, I believe, at that time. I could be wrong. Go listen to the dossier. It's a lot of information, but he breaks it down into like digestible 20-minute episodes. But they kind of let OJ get away with some stuff because of the Rodney King stuff and what came out with that. And they were like, well, let's just take it easy on well-known people. And obviously that incident happens. The murders of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman happens. And, that's one of the craziest trials. Everyone makes jokes about it. It's because it's so crazy, that all of this had happened. And now he's on trial. And we all make the jokes, if the glove don't fit, you must have quit. And that's that was really, if you look at it as a whole trial, the needle. So OJ gave some blood sample, and in the evidence they found out that a needle was poked through the cap, and there was some of OJ's blood, leaking from that, getting on other evidence allegedly, and there was also alleged activity with evidence planting, and some of those cops had been caught on camera, of those cops and detectives, white cops and white detectives, basically coming out and using the N-word and being overtly racist, and he got acquitted, and at the end of the day, technically he can write that book if I did it. And which is very odd, because to me, if you were like guilty, and this is why I think that he may have not did that, because OJ would not, he had such an ego and such a presence about him that everyone loved OJ. Like, that's one thing about the ESPN documentary that came out a couple years ago, probably, I guess 10 years ago now, maybe. Everyone loved OJ. And so it was hard to believe that OJ could have done something like that. And the whole, him getting acquitted, the state or the city attorneys were just awful. Were not good. They were, they put up a kind of not a rookie guy. I can't remember his name now, but he ended up, basically ruined his career, essentially. But Johnny Cochran, in his taglines, watching it back, I wasn't even alive when this happened. No, I was like 6 months old. But like, it's just crazy. It is just super crazy. And then now he got arrested and served, I think, 8 years for basically trying to get his memorabilia back that was stolen from him. And one thing that, I think the civil trial happened too, where he ended up being guilty and owed them all this money. I ain't gonna lie. If I owed some people that millions of dollars, I'm moving stuff around. I'll try to pay, but man, that's a lifetime. But at the same time, with a civil trial, the deck was stacked. I'm gonna be honest with you. I think the deck was stacked the way it was described, and you know, obviously the families want their some justice and some closure, but at the same time, it's like you're throwing the book at a guy in the civil trial, but you know he already got acquitted, so he can't. He's not guilty in the court of law, and not like I said. I don't think he did it. I really there's a big part of me that I don't think he did it, and that's probably a hot take for a lot of people when you hear this, because you're probably like, "Dang, Yehola really going he's going off the deep end with this OJ." But OJ, like I said, here in the last couple years, people are gonna make their jokes, but I agree with what Cameron and Mace said on that on their podcast. They had OJ as a guest for a couple years, and that's one thing that I think a lot of people don't really understand the double standards sometimes, because I think there is a little bit of double standards in certain things, and he was found not guilty, so he's an innocent man, and he was found guilty in the public opinion because the media was just killing him. We obviously think about the white Bronco. That was one of the wildest things. I think OJ was such a big figure that I think they were in the middle of a playoff game on ABC or something, and they had to cut it off because OJ was on the run, and that whole situation was just crazy. But OJ has been a wild guy. He's a menace. Playing golf, and that's kind of what he says he does now. He served his prison time. For the Los Angeles, or not Los Angeles, Las Vegas incident that he had, and then he joined the show, and I don't know, did he do it? I asked that question on the Facebook group. I don't know. The glove didn't fit, even though the arthritis medicine wasn't taken. I don't know. Was it planted? His blood. We may never know. But OJ has passed away, and we may never know. And I made the joke on Twitter. Dang, if OJ gonna make it to heaven, I guess a lot of us are gonna make it to heaven if OJ goes to heaven. But at the end of the day, it's just jokes, But I have to agree with Mace and Cameron, them saying that he served his time for whatever he did wrong, and the courts found him to be wrong. But a comparison was made that, okay, well, OJ just was basically trying to get his stuff back, but Henry Ruggs from the Las Vegas Raiders was going 100 miles plus on the highway and killed some people and a dog or whatever. But he got 16 months. So that was, to me, that kind of looks like a get back. You got off over here in Los Angeles, but hey, we're going to get you. And in kind of mentioning the OJ situation in the 90s, Biggie was killed on, March, I think it was March 9th in 97. And there was a lot of things going on in the LAPD at that time. And during the time of Rodney King and those officers kind of getting off, not really getting harsh punishment for beating somebody down like that on national television, there were some officers involved in Biggie's assassination. So I would just encourage you guys. I'm not going to give too much of that, because if you go listen to the dossier, I'm not in contact with the producer or the guy that runs the podcast. It's just a great podcast, because I've always been very intrigued with Tupac and Biggie, especially Biggie, because growing up, that's who I didn't really listen to. Tupac really wasn't my guy. It was Biggie who I really listened to a lot and knew a lot of his songs, and so I was always kind of fascinated with that, especially with the Christopher Wallace, the Notorious movie, back in, I think, in the mid 2000s. But go check that out. You want the whole timeline. In my opinion, who killed Biggie was Amir Muhammad, who was best friends with some of these LAPD Rampart crash division guys, and I think they paid him to do it. And Rampart ended up getting kind of squashed because David Mack and Rafael Perez were involved in a bank heist, and that money to this day has never been recovered. It was like $800,000, I believe, or close to $1 million. And you know what? Russell Poole, and Phil Carson. So Russell Poole was an LAPD investigator, and then Phil Carson was an FBI agent who was on that case. Believed that that money that was used for that bank robbery was used to pay Amir Muhammad for the assassination of Biggie, and that goes all the way back to Suge Knight, because David Mack and Rafael Perez did bodyguarding for Suge Knight, allegedly. Everything I'm saying is allegedly, but that's just where the investigation went. But go check that out. But yeah, OJ, you know, he's gone, he's passed. Man, it's a crazy time. 2024 has been so nuts. You know, for me, it's been crazy. I haven't been on my A game, I'll say, but I think the tide is turning. I'll have an announcement here probably in, like I said, May. You don't know where your boy will be popping up at, but I'll be around, I guess you could say. But observation episodes are always pretty interesting because you don't know where I'm gonna go with it. You know, now I guess you guys could read the description. One thing if you guys could do for me is on YouTube or Spotify or Apple Podcast, please give me a thumbs up, rate the podcast. If you haven't done it, it just helps with the algorithms. The Facebook group is up and running. I don't post to it as much. I kind of let, you know, whoever posts, but I usually do like occasional, like if something's kind of crazy, like OJ, I had to say something about OJ. But I'm going to leave, this episode, like I said, fairly short, 25 minutes. But I'm going to leave y'all with one of my favorite Dave Chappelle jokes, and it's the OJ joke. So Dave Chappelle tells a story about a time when he was at a restaurant in LA, and he was talking to his agents, who were all white. And he looks up and he sees OJ. And he had met OJ previously at a comedy show, like a couple years before. And him and OJ make eye contact, and OJ walks over, and Dave knew that OJ didn't recognize him, but just said, because he was a black guy, the only black guy in this restaurant is him and his buddy. I can't remember his buddy's name, but he describes all the women that he was with, and it's just a funny joke, or a funny story. But then OJ walks up and says, "How are you doing, young man?" And Dave Chappelle looked in his eyes and he realized he doesn't know who I am. So OJ leaves. He gets back to his dinner and his business, and one of his white agents was like, "Could you shake hands?"